You should listen to the zip code plays because we've been apart from each other for too long. And this is a way of bringing yourself back into the place that we live or a place that we know, because there have been listeners from literally all over the world. LA is a world city. And the stories that you hear are going to, no matter where you're sitting, are going to remind you of people and places you know. And if it works the way that we should, you'll feel encouraged. You'll feel love, tension, hate, revenge, you know, and it, I hope, will start you on the journey of thinking about your neighborhood and your street and the stories that you might be missing, the stories that you want to tell your friends, lovers, families, kids before those stories disappear, because that's the connective tissue that'll prepare us for the next pandemic, the next challenge, and make us a stronger people. Hi, I'm Mildred Lewis, and if you want to learn more about my zip code play, $10 and a Tambourine, as well as the Antaeus Theatre Company, watch this video. I first heard about the Antaeus zip code plays as a listener. I honestly I had been to the theater, but obviously we were in a pandemic and nobody's going to the theater. And I just simply stumbled upon it and I was blown away. The first play that I heard was Carrie Wyatt's play about South Central. My godmother lives in South Central, and I was like thrilled, first of all, to hear a depiction of a community that I love and feel so close to, represented in a way that was interesting and not stereotypical and luscious. And the other thing that struck me was that the sound design was so on point. I used to teach audio techniques years ago, and I love sound. I still play the cello and piano. And so when I'm listening to work on, whether it's plays for us or, theater works, I really listen to the sound design. And I thought, these are people who are taking great care and understand the difference between like what would work on a stage versus what has to work in the theater of the mind. So once I heard that, I was hooked, and I didn't think that we'd have an opportunity to submit. And when the call went out to playwright unit members, I was like on it like a flash fire. I'd always wanted to do a piece about Amy Semple McPherson, who's been around, sort of lately, she's such an important part of LA history. And I thought, what if I could write a radio play that sums up all the complex feelings that I have about Los Angeles? And, they gratefully accepted it. We developed it. The main story arc for $10 and a Tambourine is Amy Semple McPherson. And I wanted to tell a story about a woman who was torn in two directions. First of all, she's this huge celebrity, actually much bigger than sort of the mega pastors or the televangelists that we know today. She sort of set the template for that. But she was involved with politics. She was an amazing humanitarian. I mean, she founded one of the major Christian denominations, the Foursquare Gospel, that's still in operation today. Her charitable work. There's an Angelus Temple still on 54th Street near Crenshaw, which is where I get my car washed. And you still hear some of the old timers talk about how she provided charity to their parents and never made them feel less than, never made them feel like they lost their dignity. And I thought, who is this woman, who has meant so much to LA? And so I wound up doing a play about her being torn between her mentor, who at this point is dead, he's a ghost, and that is Reverend Seymour, who was a one-eyed Black preacher, extraordinary man, comes from the South, goes to a Black Baptist college, leaves because it's not conservative enough for him, comes out and founds this Azusa revival, which goes on for years. And he invites Amy Semple McPherson, who at that time was having trouble in her marriage, to come out and preach, and was a sort of mentor figure to her. So on one side, we've got the Reverend coming from beyond the grave saying, hey, listen, you're too into this celebrity stuff. You're mixing around with like Charlie Chaplin. Her church in Echo Park wasn't too far from the original Hollywood. Max Sennett and the Keystone Cops used to literally like drive their motorcycles into Echo Park Lake. So Seymour comes back from the grave and he's like, got to do better. No celebrities. But then the threat comes, William Mulholland, who we know from Chinatown. And his thing is, I want a city that reflects my engineering expertise. I mean, he's the one who was largely responsible for us having water that allowed LA to become what it has become. Um, but he wasn't a perfect man. And he had a vision for LA that was a little bit rigid. And he's coming and saying, we don't want all these faith healers, snake charmers, people like you. I don't mind you doing the charity, but I want you to do it less. And I want you to sort of take a step back. So the play is really about this flamboyant, amazing woman being torn between these two characters and then deciding to fight on in her own way. When you're thinking about radio and thinking about podcasts, you have to think entirely differently than you do for the theater. Because they're not going to be able to see. And that seems like an easy thing, yeah, that you just like can translate one thing to another, but it's not easy at all. You really, because a lot of things that you might see on stage, you have to find a way, an analog for that with sound. So I think that what the company did was absolutely brilliant. They assigned me Gigi Birmingham, who's a wonderful actor who is also a director. But the first conversations I had were with Jeff Gardner, who recently won recognition, decade recognition for his excellence in sound design. And those things were absolutely essential because what it allowed me to do was to sort of, I'd written for radio before. Years ago, I had something WWBAI in New York. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I had 2 plays done on KPFK Pacifica. So I'd written for radio before, and I knew, and I taught sound techniques. But it's a different thing when it's really your play and you're excited and thrilled and, sort of over the moon about, this being your first major outing with a new company. Jeff really helped me refine my ideas about the complexity of sound, so that by the time Gigi came on board, we had something to hand to her that was really rich in terms of its soundscape, really sophisticated. Gigi came on, added some wonderful ideas, making Mulholland much more of an antagonist in the piece, sharpening the conflict. And then we had 3 terrific actors, Eve Gordon, who I knew from ESTLA, the wonderful Mike McShane, who's just a terrific, terrific actor, and Leonard House, who's got this wonderful voice and understood the spirit of Reverend Seymour, that he is both conservative and playful, that he is a mentor to Amy Simple McPherson, but he's also a rival. So everybody brought something new to the table. 2 extensive rehearsals with a terrific stage manager, Nicole Sounsel. And then they actually hand delivered the sound setup to each actor. So I think you can see that I put my play into the hands of people who had really learned from the first round, who were completely committed to giving us not only a professional process, but a process that really deepened the art. I've heard so many plays on radio where you can tell it was just a play recorded for radio, as opposed to a play that was written and conceived for radio. And that's the difference that this process made. I want them to think about themselves in relationship to Los Angeles. I want people to mostly get out of it, here we are in this moment, in this now hopefully receding pandemic moment. And we're talking about 3 people who were at the birth of a great city. 2 who bring religion and spirit, which have been always important to Los Angeles, and 1 who represents the business sector. All of them well known. Reverend Seymour during the Azusa Street revival, literally thousands of people coming, 24 hours a day for months on end. Simple McPherson owned the radio station where the play is set. She was the first woman in California to own a radio station, served literally hundreds of thousands of people, reached millions, had her own magazine, literally a media empire before we understood what media empires were. William Mulholland, is, such an insignificant figure and such a complex man. When we meet him in the play, he's lost his wife, and everyone agrees that that was a signal break, as it is for most people. But it's before the Francis River Dam disaster, so he's both personally devastated, but has never had a higher reputation for his success in bringing water to Los Angeles. So I want people to think about all the forces that bring something like a Los Angeles into play. But more than that, I want them to think about the forces that are operating on them and how they negotiate the challenges of their world with humor, with grace, as Simple McPherson does, and how they preserve their integrity. Because in the end, of course, Simple McPherson does not win. You know, she dies very young of a barbiturate as overdose, not sure whether it was accidental or a suicide. But ultimately, the pressures that she was under brought her to a dark place. And I think there's never been a better moment to think about that as we're looking at what's happening in the world around us. One of the things that we did is we worked as a team, which I think is so important. And we swapped scripts early on, and not so much to create like an intentional link between them, but so that we'd have a sense of what the larger universe was, and obviously to make the plays better. Really excited about Inglewood. I literally live like not even a quarter mile from the old Hollywood racetrack. And it's such a great story that Paula Sismar has told. West Hollywood, I used to work at City 10, you know, the city cable channel. And so to see a story set in West Hollywood with so much of Shauna Abley's heart, I mean, you know, you think of him as a horror guy. You know, he's written so much for film and television in that world and in reality, but you know, he does such a great job with this couple and this encounter they have with a new gentrifier. You know, Pepper, I think, has done an incredible job. I mean, I'm just so excited for all of them. I mean, Elizabeth Wong is writing about some bingo players, like in the, you know, in the Asian parts of LA. And what I think we've done is to provide a non-stereotypical glimpse into aspects or places of LA that we often don't give too much thought to. One of the things I sort of believe about Los Angeles is that we think that there's no culture and think that there's no history, but we're living in an extraordinary place with many, many stories to tell. And things like the zip code plays are almost like these delightful appetizers that just give people a sense of like, you know, this is where we are sitting. You know, we're sitting on, you know, land that has not been seeded, of course, and we're sitting and building on the legacies of all these people who we really ought to know. You know, and building in communities. I mean, people talk about feeling isolated, but you think about the mahjong parlors and the bingo parlors, and you know, I mean, not Chinatown now. I mean, but more Monterey Park, you know, Alhambra and so forth. And I think if we can plug into that, especially after this pandemic finally fades, we're going to be stronger people because we face some really significant challenges ahead. And those can't all be solved by theater, but theater can play a role in how we understand and frame those experiences, and not just in a teaching way, but in a way of bringing us together as a community. And radio is great for that because nobody has to go anywhere, you know, and it's the theater of the mind. And these plays can all be enjoyed by like the whole family, which I think is awesome. I mean, essentially, Antaeus is doing what Pixar does. You know, where the kids can get one thing out of it, like in $10 in the Tambourine, my play, there are lots of really cool sound effects because they're in her radio station, you know, and there were a lot of cool sounds that were happening in those early radio days. You know, they were inventing the radio format at that time. So I think a kid or teen could get into that aspect of it along with the ghost aspect of it. I think when we go to West Hollywood, there are things to enjoy. Pepper's piece in Pacoima. I mean, how often do we make it to North LA and you know, which is still so rich and so vibrant and changing like crazy. So I think it's adults, I think it's kids, I think it's people who want to enjoy the theater of the mind, and I think it can be deeply restorative. And I honestly think people should listen to the first season, you know, to just kind of prep themselves for season 2. I think the zip code plays are a blast. It may have started as a way to just keep the company active during the pandemic, but I think it's grown far beyond that. I think that the the sort of tours through the areas of the city are something that, we're going to be looking at, for a long time to come. And it's a way, if you want to get your family into what is South Central like, what does it feel like to be there? I've heard so many scary things, or Pacoima, who goes there? I think when you listen to the play and you look at the companion material, you're going to understand that we are part of a city. This is not just a megalopolis. This is not just a region, but we're a part of what's going on. And at the same time, you'll be deeply entertained. I mean, you can't get better actors than we have. I mean, and it's not just that these are actors that you'll recognize from big name theater productions or film and TV productions. Of course you will. But it's more the commitment and the quality that's going to sing for you. And the company, I think, speaks for itself. I mean, not everybody's going to be into a classical mindset. I understand that. I accept it. I respect it. But I don't think we can afford to lose track of that. That's something we need to bring forward with us. For me, it's about expanding the canon, making it so that we respect and revere more work, so more people have the opportunity to become regarded as classical authors, as the voices for our time, rather than, sort of bifurcating ourselves. Um, and yeah, if we do that, if we abandon the classics, if we abandon the classical sensibility, I think we lose something very vital. First of all, I enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as well. I really need you to go to Stage Explorations. It's on YouTube. And I need you to do what we all need to do. Click like and subscribe. It'll give you the opportunity to hear from so many theater makers, many of whom are doing amazing work that you might never have heard of, that might have just gotten lost in the noise. And you're going to see that there are dozens of videos, makers who you might not have heard of, but as soon as you see them, they're people that you'll want to follow in the Los Angeles theater community, on television, on film, and in the digital space. So please go to Stage Explorations. They're on YouTube. Click like and then subscribe. If you enjoyed our talk as well, consider following what Antaeus is doing. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. You can go to Antaeus, Antaeus.org, and see if it's something that you might enjoy. We would love to have you as collaborators, audience members, and just part of our broader community. We're here to serve you. And if you get engaged with us, we hope to earn a repeat visit and maybe a little bit of collaboration.
You have a lot of choices when, for your entertainment these days. And there's, 500 channels on TV. And even though the movie theaters are closed right now, there are, you can still watch every movie that's ever been released and every TV show. And there's what you don't have a lot of chances to do, or just at least fewer, is to support theater companies. And, theater has taken a real hit over the last year. And so this is a really easy way to support a company who's committed to keeping artists employed. And so there's that. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. You can do it in your car. You can do it wherever. There's also just the fact that how often do you listen to radio drama? How often do you really listen to radio drama? And now you've got the perfect way to give it a try. We listen to books on tape and we listen to, like the murder podcasts and all that stuff. But, these bite-sized 20-minute or so full plays, beginning, middle, and end with really great actors. Why not? It's a great way to spend some time and support a theater company, expose yourself to a different artistic medium, and they're really good. Hi, I'm Sean Abley, and a playwright. And if you want to find out more about my zip code play, 90069 West Hollywood, Brunch Interrupted, watch this video. One of the things that is really great about Antaeus is that as I've been in the company, even in the short time, like 3 years, they have instituted more and more outlets for the playwrights to create. So we've been doing some 10-minute play festivals internally, and they have a reading series called Lab Results. And once the pandemic started and basically live theater shut down, they were looking for ways to keep all the artists, the playwrights and the actors, employed basically. And they came up with this, instead of Zoom theater, they came up with this great idea for radio theater. So it's not we're not like compromising our work by putting it on Zoom. We're actually writing for a medium correctly. So they did round one of they just reached out to the lab and said, who wants to be involved? We're going to pick 6 writers and we'll go from there. And so I wasn't in the first season, as they're calling it. And then the second season rolled around and I threw my hat in the ring and they chose me. And honestly, having heard the first season, I'd never written for radio before, or radio drama. It really, I'm glad that I wasn't in the first one, because the playwrights they chose for the first one were so good, and the post-production and the sound was so amazing that then I had the advantage of having all of that as an example. So yeah, so they reached out to us and we said yes. My piece is called Brunch Interrupted. I lived in West Hollywood for 10 years. I watched the city during those 10 years change. And then I live now in Hollywood with my husband, and we've lived in this place for 17 years now, but still, connected to West Hollywood, and I'm there a lot. And a thing that's happening with West Hollywood is it's being sort of colonized by straight people. It was a city that was formed with gay interests in mind, and it was, where the majority of gay bars were in the Los Angeles area, and they had, domestic partnership early, and the city council is, queer people, and so it was this sort of thriving gay metropolis. I mean, people know it all over the country. When you say West Hollywood, they immediately know what you're talking about. But what started happening was the city started getting sold to the highest bidder, and development started happening in the city, and it wasn't necessarily queer centric, and queer businesses were closing because they couldn't afford the rents anymore. I mean, the church, the gay church, moved out of its West Hollywood location because it couldn't afford the rent anymore. And I just thought that was a shame. And so when it came time to write a play about an area, and and I'm always sort of looking for an angle where it can be something more than just a play. It can maybe, be a statement about something. That was forefront in my mind. And so the kickoff of the play is, people at a gay bar being confronted by a straight woman who has moved into West Hollywood complaining about noise at a bar. Well, the gay people aren't complaining about noise at the bar. Like that's our thing, right? And then the next thing that I wanted to do is, being a responsible and responsive artist to what's going on in the world right now, I wanted to try to make space for characters of color and artists of color that could be involved. So after initially sort of looking at this problem of straight colonization in West Hollywood, it sort of came to me that if, West Hollywood is a pretty white city, let's be frank. And if you were one of the few Black queer people living in that city, would more white people coming to the city really make that much of a difference? Like, would it matter that they're straight? It would probably matter more that it's just more white influence in a place where you are outnumbered. So, treading very carefully, I decided to make that sort of the crux of my story, that the white character is, their limited experience says, oh, a bunch of straight people are moving into the city and that's bad. And the Black character saying, there's a different viewpoint here that you're not considering because of your limited experience. And, and that happens in a couple. And I wanted to explore when a white person is asked the tough questions, how do they respond? And because I can't do it from the Black perspective, because that's not me, that's not my lived experience, but I can certainly do it from the perspective of a white person who has been challenged and feeling defensive and not knowing how to answer the right way, and then further sort of be of service to the solution. So I set that challenge for myself in this, 20-minute radio play. And, I reached out to a friend of mine, Michael Shepard, who is a director and an artistic director of the gay theater in town, Celebration Theater. And he's also a Black man who I have collaborated with for many, many years. And my friend Parnell Damone, who's a Black actor who I've also collaborated with. And I was humbly handed them this work. And I'm like, please tell me, what, am I on the mark? Am I out of my lane? Whatever. And I think we, I don't know. It's not, I don't want to say it's a perfect solution, but I feel like it's a good start. So the story of Brunch Interrupted is, it begins in the parking lot of the Gold Coast Bar, which is, if you know the Gold Coast Bar, you know that they host this red dress party every year, or they did. Unfortunately, they've closed. But they used to hold a red dress party in their parking lot every year. And it was a charitable event. And, it got pretty raucous. So what's happening at the beginning is the two main characters are Joe and Moses, a couple, interracial couple, are setting up for this red dress party. And there's music playing in the bar. And it's loud music. And a white woman who lives in the neighborhood approaches them to complain about the noise. And turns out she's complained several times about the noise, about this bar. And thus starts a conversation with this woman and her entitlement to living in a quiet neighborhood in a city that was not necessarily built for her. They have an argument, and the interracial couple, they sort of settle it in the moment, and the couple goes off to go have brunch. And while they're at brunch, the two of them start talking about this invasion of straight people into West Hollywood. And Moses, who's the Black gentleman of the couple, is not so, worried about more straight people. He's actually more concerned that city's just getting whiter. And Joe, his partner, thinks that he understands, but he's quickly sort of disabused of that notion that he is making the right considerations in this argument. And while they're, as a couple sort of working through that, the woman shows up at their brunch. So once again, she's sort of invading gay space. And the three of them have a discussion that it doesn't solve all the problems because, these are messy issues, but it does help them all understand a little bit more about who's affected and what the stakes are. I am blessed with an amazing team of people on this project, and I pinch myself, quite frankly. When I was writing it, I wrote this piece for certain actors. So I'll just start with Bill Brocktrup, who is the co-artistic director of Antaeus Theatre Company. And I in my head, I always had his voice as I was writing the script, but he's the co-artistic director and he's making the decisions, sort of who's doing these things and who's getting cast and stuff like that. So he wanted to be very careful not to be like, I'm going to take this plum role for myself. But I was like, I got to have you. I really got to have you. And I've been watching Bill for decades, and he's so talented. And I've seen him on stage and I've seen him on screen. And I mean, just like A+ for casting for this. And I got him, and he is great. And part of the way I got him was Michael Shepard, who's the director, who is also the artistic director of Celebration Theater here in Los Angeles. But we've known each other since our Chicago theater days 30 years ago. So we've known each other forever. And, he was my first choice to direct this. And when we got him on board, this was before we cast anything, I was like, I want Bill. And he's like, I think Bill would be perfect. And Bill was like, I don't know. I may, and we're both like, no, we have to have you. And so he relented, and I'm so happy he did, because he's so good. So Michael I've worked with forever, and I knew that if I handed something like this to him as, a Black theater artist who has been fighting the good fight his entire career, he would not be shy about telling me where maybe this didn't hit the mark, or was I just completely out of bounds, like even trying to write this. Like, he would be honest with me. So already now we've established like a chunk of the dream team. Playing opposite Bill is another friend of mine. Playing Moses, the Black half of the interracial couple, is Parnell Damone. And Parnell is also, I met him through Celebration Theater. And I don't know, we've hit it off ages ago. Right. And so I've had him, like, when I write a script, frequently I'll just like call actors to come in and like read just so I can hear it. And I've had him do those things. And so yeah, it was really great that we could like get him, and he and Michael have worked together forever. So that was, again, it's like old home week with this. Like, there was no surprises. I got to just work with these people that I've known and respect so much. And Parnell also, good friend. And I trusted him to like, tell me the truth about this piece. And then, so the woman in the piece, there's 3 actors. The woman in the piece is an older white woman who lives in the neighborhood. And there is this amazing actor at Antaeus named Ann G. Bird. And if anybody has like worked at Antaeus, or anybody in the Playwrights Lab that's hearing me talk about this, they are right now nodding in agreement that she's magnificent actor. And I write for her when I write, like every time I write a little 10-minute piece or anything, I write for Ann G. Bird. And, the competition's stiff in these things. There's 6 playwrights that are trying to cast their play. And, when I wrote it, I had her voice in mind, and I was like, I need this actor. And I got her. I could not have been happier. She's so good. So yeah, so then at that point, I'm like, well, I can't lose. Like, this is, front loaded to be amazing. And then the first time they read it was like, yeah, magic. So, and then the sort of, the icing on, I was going to say the icing on the cake, but actually it's not the icing on the cake. It's like the cake. Everything else is the icing. Jeff Gardner, who is the sound guru, he does so many things. I know that like each one of them would have a name for the position, for what it is. But since he's like doing it all, sound guru, sound wizard, sound magician. And, I didn't know him personally before I, listened to the first season of these plays. But I've heard his work on the various stage readings and things that are broadcast around town. And I didn't know who that was, but then I heard his work on the previous Zip Code plays, and somebody said his name, and then I met him, and he started talking about his credits. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've heard your work for years in Los Angeles. And the meeting with him, when we just went through the script and he would bring things up, and I'm like, oh right, that has a sound to it. Yeah, he just had such, like, I mean, why am I saying he's a pro? Like, why would I even think differently? But he opened my eyes to like the choices that you need to make when you write something like this. So in this whole process, the biggest education I got was from him in how to write toward the medium, and then think creatively within that to sort of get past just footsteps, you know what I mean? Or just like doors opening, like think of the smaller details that really create a world in radio theater. I actually went into this thinking, if you're writing a radio play, it's a stage play and you put in sound. Like I thought that was like the brief. And that's not true. It's somewhere between writing a screenplay and a stage play. My process anyway was just writing it. Here's the story. Here's the narrative, beginning, middle, and end. Then going back and taking and looking at all the stage directions where I have movement or things like that, and thinking about, oh, people can't see this. Like what? Oh, well, here's a big thing. The big thing in my play is it's about race on some level. How do you let your audience know that one of your characters is Black? They can't see him. And you can't presume that somebody will like pick it up through their voice, or maybe even you can't presume that somebody will pick it up through the dialogue that you give them. So you have to figure out a way that in a medium where you can't see the performers, how you translate that. And that was one of the places where, when we were rehearsing this, that I looked to Parnell and Michael Shepard to sort of guide me on what would be sort of acceptable language-wise, reference-wise, who would say it, like that kind of thing, to establish that character. And I really love that challenge specifically. But yeah, so there's that, but then there's also knowing that when you change locations, like how does that manifest? Because you don't have lights up, lights down, you don't have set pieces moving on and off. All you have is sound to let you know where you are. And so we had some talks about how do we get from place, so it's interesting. I came in writing one thing, and then my second draft was I'd gone to radio play school courtesy of Jeff Gardner, and went through and refined or changed certain elements, visual elements, into sound. So one of the things, when I wrote this play, and this is just particular to me as a playwright, I always have my eye on something having a longer life than just the one production. So even though this is sort of specific for radio theater, in my head, as soon as this is done, there'll be a version of it that can be done on stage. So I don't want to say it'll take a step backwards, but it'll be, figuring out how the stuff that I felt needed to be translated to sound can then be sort of switched back to visual for the most part. And yeah, I mean, I would love to see it, like, it's kind of killed me not to actually be watching them record it. So yeah, I would love to see it on stage at some point. One of the great things about being involved in this project and just having the Zip Code plays exist is getting to look at the Los Angeles area where I've lived for over 20 years. I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life. But I haven't, it's so spread out, I haven't seen it all still. And one of the great things about just the fact that they exist is that I get to dip into all these areas that I may not have, be super invested in already. But also the Antaeus's commitment to diversity and inclusion in the artists involved means that I get to hear people's work, both playwrights, actors, sound, directing, from a really broad spectrum of people. of creators, and I get to have it all in sort of one place, and I think that's really exciting. So one of the things that Antaeus is doing is these walking tours of the zip codes that are in the zip code plays. And I would love for one for West Hollywood. Certainly there are some fun places to like discover in West Hollywood. And certainly there are some places that, let's just say that the straight world may not be quite as privy to in West Hollywood, that I would love to let them know about. Yeah, you know, like I said earlier, that there's something about West Hollywood where it's sort of in a medium state of crisis, in that the culture of it is slowly being eroded. And so any way that we can keep that, record that, like preserve that in amber would be great. So yeah, a walking tour. I think what I want the audience to get out of my zip code play is it changed from when I started writing it to today. And I think the big thing I want to get people to get out of it is that it is a person's personal responsibility to acknowledge another person's lived experience, to acknowledge that that is valid. It's not your responsibility to understand it 100%. It's not your responsibility to live it. It's not your responsibility really to do anything other than acknowledge that it's real. And in doing that, you give that person the space they need to move about in life with your support. Now, there's obviously action items I feel that, you know, we can do as allies for each other. And those are situational, absolutely. But I think the one main one is you just have to acknowledge that someone else is real. And just because you don't understand it and you haven't lived it doesn't mean that it's not valid and not important, and possibly not more important than your own. So that's what I would hope people would get out of it. And, you know, if it's, you know, everybody wants like, oh, I hope it starts a conversation. I hope it starts more than a conversation, but it'll start with a conversation. I'm not necessarily looking to change the world, but I am sort of looking to change people's minds. If you liked listening to me prattle on about my play and various other things in theater, you can check out my zip code play and all the rest of the zip code plays from both season 1 and season 2 at antaeus.org. There's also a lot of ways that if you want to support our theater that you can donate, and you can sign up for our newsletter, and we'll let you know the minute you can walk back into the actual building. But in the meantime, please enjoy the Zip Code Plays Season 2 wherever you get your podcasts or radio dramas.
Well, you should listen to the zip code plays because they're going to be beautifully performed. The sound will be amazing. I already know that in advance. And the stories are good. And if you have any interest whatsoever in, you know, in humanity and human nature or in theater, that's exactly why you would listen to the zip code plays. But the more important fun thing is again, that you get to see little corners of Los Angeles that you might not see on a normal day. That, a lot of people who are longtime Los Angeles residents or even native Angelinos don't get to all of the little corners of this city. The city is geographically huge and spread out. And, you could live here for 10, 15, or 20 years before you realize, oh my gosh, there's this little neighborhood that's tucked here between, Eagle Rock and Echo Park. And I never even saw this before. And it's, it's an absolutely fascinating city where from block to block or, from half mile to half mile, you're going to be in a completely different temperature zone and a totally different architectural zone. It's absolutely fascinating. And the zip code plays give you an opportunity to not have to drive and sit in heavy traffic and get to see these neighborhoods and see the people in them. Hi, I'm Paula Sismar. I'm one of the writers of the Zip Code Plays, Season 2, from Antaeus Theatre. If you want to know more about the plays that we're doing, and if you want to know more about Antaeus, please go to their website and learn about the plays and how you can watch them. They're all free. And you can watch this video to learn a little bit more about the VIG, which is from Inglewood 90303. Well, the zip code plays were announced to Playwrights Lab members as an opportunity to explore various neighborhoods of Los Angeles and, check out what's going on in some of the far reaches of LA and some of the hidden neighborhoods. So we were all asked to pitch a story if we were interested in participating. And I pitched the Inglewood idea to Antaeus, and fortunately, I was selected. And the idea I think is to look at this city in terms of what it actually is, which is this is not a single monolithic city with one culture, and certainly not with one ethnic group or one racial group or even one geographical terrain. This is a very, very different kind of a place, and it's very exciting in that regard. So I was looking at some of the neighborhoods that I really like and some of the neighborhoods that don't get visited often or talked about often. For the first iteration, I think I pitched a story in East LA. That one did not get selected. And then this time around, I remembered how much I loved Inglewood and the old vestiges of Hollywood Park. So I pitched that one this time and fortunately, got to be one of the people writing one of the zip code plays. The idea for the VIG, which is my zip code play for Inglewood 90303, came from a lot of different sources. And that's pretty much true of the way I work in general. It's generally not one idea that occurs to me. It usually becomes a kind of confluence of multiple ideas. So I had been thinking about a story for a long time about uh, based on my uncle who ran away when he was like 16 years old from home and eventually kind of became a racetrack tout. And then I was also thinking about Inglewood itself and the area near the airport and again, the far reaches of Los Angeles. And then I was also thinking about the time when my husband was teaching at the UCLA paramedic school, which at the time was in Inglewood. And since I teach at USC, sometimes I would drop him off at Inglewood before I would go off to teach at USC. And it was usually too early to go to teach my classes. So I would grab a Starbucks and I would sit in the parking lot behind the Target on Century Boulevard, where you could overlook the Hollywood Park racetrack and you could actually watch the exercise riders in the morning. So it was always fascinating to me. It's usually very early in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And the exercise riders at that time were usually just finishing up their rides. And to watch them, run these magnificent animals around that track, not during a racing time, but just at the time that they were working out and, having the horses experience this place, and getting to run their legs off. It was just really just kind of magical to me to just be sitting there with my cup of coffee early in the morning and watching this activity. So, um, when the zip code plays were announced as an opportunity for Playwrights Lab members, all of these ideas just started to come together in my head. It was like, well, suppose we have a character who works at the track, or no, I don't really want to do that. Suppose we have a character who is looking for someone who works at the track. And then I thought of my uncle, and then I thought of the days that I used to watch the exercise riders at the track, and it all just kind of coalesced. And on top of that became this question of, why do people come to Los Angeles in the first place? Why do they come to California? We usually come from other places. I know there are a lot of native Angelinos. I'm not one of them. I'm an adoptee. Um, but, it's very, very much my home. I can't imagine being anything but a Californian now. And so the question becomes, why do people come from other places and make their home here? And why is it such a place, you know, where so many people are accepted and rub elbows with each other? And would I really want to live in a place that wasn't as diverse anymore? And so I started to think about, what it would be like to be this young woman who comes from a place that's totally alien from LA, who comes in search of her uncle who has, made a place there. So that's essentially what the story is about. It's a young woman whose mother has just died, who comes to Hollywood Park to try to find this long lost uncle who has been secretly supporting the family or sending her mother money, but has not been in contact with his family for a very long time. So I also started to look at, what it's like to be the outcast of a family, and the one who doesn't fit in, and the one who feels a certain amount of shame and doesn't want to be discovered by his family. So um, it's a difficult decision for Geo, one of the main characters, to make, to accept his past and to welcome his niece into his life. And in fact, that is the struggle of the play. Well, the team for the zip code plays is just pretty amazing. I mean, Antaeus actors, as you know, are just really wonderful. Absolutely incredible professionals. And the uh, designer of all of this sound insanity is Jeff Gardner, who is, to me, a genius. So he is the one who's in charge of uh, the sound design, creating all of the sound effects, doing all the Foley work, making sure that the actors all sound good. And then I also worked with an amazing director, Bernadette Speaks, who I adore, and three really incredible actors. And I'm really, really happy to say that it's, a diverse cast and a diverse team, because I really wanted it to reflect the faces of Los Angeles. So, I'm a white playwright, but I didn't want to write a play that was just all white people, because that's not the way we live in LA. We live in a diverse world. So the cast reflects that, the team reflects that. And the wonderful thing about it is, as I started to think about this play, and I started to think about what could you do in a sound only environment, and what could you do that would be possible in an audio play that you actually couldn't do on stage. And I started to think, well, horses. You can hear the sound of horses. We can't really do this play on stage because you would miss the horses. You wouldn't, you would have to have a character who's miming riding the horses, or a character who's miming, grooming the horses. But in an audio play, Jeff can create the sounds of the horses running. He can create the sound of the horses snorting. He can create the sound of, the horses being, washed down and groomed. So it just became really exciting to me to kind of write in this fourth character, the horse, who we hear only as a sound effect. So that was part of the fun. But it was just a really, really wonderful experience. I collaborated a lot with the artistic directors on rewrites. They gave great notes. I was able to be at rehearsal and hear the actors and hear their questions. And it's wonderful in play development when you can work with another group of people who are creative and imaginative in their own right, and they can actually contribute to the development of the play. So I had a really wonderful time. I think what I would like the audience to get from this play is a sense of melancholy for a certain kind of loss, but also a sense of hope for how people can make connections. I should say that one of the things that gets addressed in the VIG is the fact that Hollywood Park doesn't exist anymore. I set the play 2 weeks before Hollywood Park was about to close down in December 2013. And as you know, that entire area is being developed, is being turned into a stadium and condos and restaurants. And that's something I think we have to think about, not only in Los Angeles, but in many of our cities. And that is, what happens when we try to um, create a new place. It's not that I'm totally against urban development, but unfortunately, that usually leads to gentrification. And so we might get something shiny and new in its place, but what happens to the people who are living there? So that's one of the things I wanted the audience to think about when this play was over. Um, what's going to happen to these people? Where is everybody going to go who's now been displaced? Because the exercise writer and the uncle who also works at the track are not going to have their jobs. They're going to have to move on and find a new life somewhere else. And the young woman who has come out to Los Angeles to look for a new life is not going to be able to find it there because this place is closing. So what are the trade-offs of so-called having progress and then displacing the people who've lived someplace for years and years? And then what about the loss of relationships, and what kind of loss is there when we leave our families behind? So all of those questions I think are, you know, one of the things that I was hoping the audience would think about when this play is over. And those are kind of melancholic and regretful things. But I also wanted them to leave with a sense that new connections have been made and that people are very resilient and will just keep moving on and going forward. So I'm kind of hoping for a complicated response, and also I'm hoping that people will have some fun. As I said, you get to imagine that you're at a racetrack and you're hearing the horses running, and with any luck, you'll feel as if you're riding the horse yourself. One of the things about the zip code plays is that they're just fun. You know, it's not a burden. I mean, I am largely guilty about writing some plays that are intense and heavy and bleak. Um, and the good news is the zip code plays are not that. They're fun. They're short. Um, you can go to many different locations and hear different voices in a not particularly long time. You can spread them out. You can listen one at a time or listen to all of them in a great big, clump. But they're fun and they're different, and each voice is very, very different. Each of the playwrights selected write completely and totally differently from the others, and have taken on topics that are completely and totally different. So it's this wonderful wide array of not only writing voices, but also of reflections of the stories of the people of this community. So, and it's fun. It's not intense. It's not heavy. This, for a change, is not me in a bleak mode, and the other playwrights also have made sure that the experience is insightful but fun. If you enjoyed this conversation about the zip code plays and Antaeus Theater, please go to their website and learn about the plays and how you can download them. They're all free. And also go on the walking tour. It's fun. I think you'll see a lot about the city of Los Angeles that you didn't actually know. So I do hope you have fun and enjoy it.
What I'm looking forward to in season 2 of the Zip Code plays, just really basic. I'm just first of all looking to just hear a good story. I'm looking to go for a good ride, and I know the writers who are involved will give us that. But also how they're able to within that ride incorporate the history of whatever zip code they're focused on, whatever zip code that they brought to the table. Because there's stories that I know I don't have any clue about that I would be totally surprised to learn of. So that's what I'm looking forward to on this go around, just like last time. I think any listener should come and hear the zip code plays. One, you're going to be entertained. I mean, that's the first thing. People want to be entertained. They want to go for a ride, just like I spoke of before. I want to go for a ride. I want to hear a good story, and I want to hear good performances. And that's why they should come, first of all, because they will be entertained. But secondly, because you're going to find out history that you didn't have any idea about. You're going to find out about these little places and some of these people in LA, in the LA County area that you didn't know about before. And again, the history and how it relates to today will be there for people to pick up on. And so I think not only will it make you entertained, but it'll also leave you with the ability to gain knowledge that you didn't have before. And in gaining that knowledge, actually making yourself better in a certain type of way. Because when you have knowledge, then you can seek out more things that you didn't know existed before. And that knowledge will make you even a better person than you were before you came into it. Hey, I'm Kari Wyatt, author of Gold and Shine. And if you want to learn more about my podcast audio play, watch this video. The idea for Gold and Shine came about. I just was looking for an idea because they were accepting pitches for Zip Code Plays 2, and I was thinking I wasn't even going to submit. And then I thought, well, let me just walk around, live my life, see if anything came to mind. Eventually, I just happened to be online, and I found something about the gold rush. And I was like, the gold rush. That could be interesting. So I started delving deeper into the gold rush, and I discovered that the actual first gold in California wasn't found up north. It was found in Antelope Valley, down here in Southern California. And so then I was like, wow, that's an interesting history that most people don't realize. And in researching that topic about the gold rush, I discovered that slave owners from the South came out here also to strike their fortune. And they would bring some of their slaves with them. And sometimes those slaves would run away and gain their freedom. So I was like, you know what? All of that could be very interesting history to incorporate into this audio play, along with the fact that Pacoima itself was really one of the only places in the valley where black people could live up until like the early 60s. Because of housing covenants and general discrimination, black people weren't living in various parts of the city. It was either South Central, or Pacoima was also another point in the LA County where a lot of black residents lived. And then once housing covenants were broken and different discriminatory practices were stopped, then black people started to move into other parts of the valley and other parts of Los Angeles in general. So I said, all that is an interesting history. And even as far back as in the 1800s, Pacoima, before it was even called Pacoima, was a place that was very diverse, whereas other parts of LA weren't. But Pacoima was always that. So I said, I need to set this here, because I didn't know that about Pacoima. I've driven past Pacoima, I've driven through it. I didn't know there was this history of diversity. Okay, the main character is a college professor named Dr. Lachey Fair. And she is a professor at a fictional local university who's disaffected by her job and by something that's happened at her job. And she is thinking of leaving the profession. And she runs into a man named Samson, who is in her neighborhood, walking through the neighborhood, who has a mule. And they have some interaction, and that interaction leads to some things. I won't get too far into it because I want it to be surprising. And she also has a friend who's a part of the story named Nona, who's also a college professor. The team is Sandra McLean. She directed it. I was introduced to her through our associate, through our artistic director, actually, Bill Brockstrup. and Kitty Swink, and they put me in contact with Sandra, and she did a wonderful job. She was excellent to work with. She was very insightful and gave me some good feedback that helped me make the story better, helped me make the story just a little bit more poignant than it was on the first draft I had written. Karen Molina White plays Lachey. Tamika Kate Donegal plays her friend Nona, and Dale Turner plays Samson. And these are all Antaeus associated actors. They're in the company at Antaeus. And so I didn't have to go far to find talent. What I would like for the audience to get out of the play, what I would love for the audience to get out of the play is really not just the sense of the history of the gold rush or of what Pacoima was in terms of a bastion for black people in a certain time period in terms of being able to live there. I would also like people to understand how the university system itself is not just a place of education. You know, universities are big business. They're nonprofits officially, but they're really big business. They have investments like they have investments like a corporation would have investments. You know, they are trying to make money in their way, and people can be victimized by that. I'd also like people to get out of it that we are connected to our history. History is not just something that happened back then. History is always present. The things that happen in history don't just disappear. You know, the tendrils of it float throughout time and space. The things that happened in 1860s are still happening today. You had that riot, that insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. You had many of those people who would say Blue Lives Matter, but they killed a police officer. They assaulted police officers in that same insurrection. You know, the response to those people was much different than the protesters for Black Lives Matter who had been in the city just in June. The presence of the police, the tactics of the police force were totally diametrically opposed. So, and the FBI has informed Congress on a couple of occasions now that domestic terrorism, specifically white supremacists, are the biggest threat to our national security. This has been true for over 100 years. So when you talk about the history of the Ku Klux Klan, you talk about the history of Nazis, of white nationalists, we're still talking about the same things today. So because something happened back in the history, you know, doesn't mean it's over. It just happened back then, but you can still see a hand from back then into in your present day. So I really want people, if nothing else, get that. And the things that people have gone through to get you to where you are today. I want people to really appreciate that there are people who came before you that help you to get where you are. And that you don't live your life for that. You have to live your own life for the way you want to live it. But there is some honor that needs to be paid for those that paved the way for you to get where you are. I mean, really, the art is the spiritual backbone of any community. It's the spiritual backbone of your nation. The things that are happening, it's a time capsule, right? The things that I could go look at a play from Eugene O'Neill's time and find out what was going on in part of this country at that time period. You know, so on throughout the ages, that's what art serves to do. It shows us ourselves. It helps us connect to ourselves. It helps us connect to other people. It helps us to have experiences that we might not have had ourselves personally. It creates empathy at its best. You know, even if it's not an experience that you've had, somebody has had it and you see it played out in a dramatic form. And usually I would say when people see art, art connects with people in a way that a politician can't connect with a person. It connects in a way that an activist can't connect with a person. It really seeps into your soul, whether you want it to or not, because that's what art is. It reaches inside you when you see it, or when you hear it, or when you look at it. So Antaeus, like I've said, puts forth such quality work So there's a lot for you to be moved by. There's a lot for you to learn from. And Antaeus does it at a high level with many different kinds of people. And if you were going to support a theater, Antaeus would be one to support because it's really coming from that place of art being pure, art making a difference in a person's life. Hey, I'm Kari Wyatt, playwright, Golden Shine, a part of Zip Code Plays too. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, please go to Antaeus's website and support the theater in any way you can, whether that's volunteering or whether that's a cash donation. All help is appreciated.
People should listen to the Zip Code Plays because of actually many different reasons. LA is super, super diverse. And I don't know that people always get a chance to experience that. And what I mean by that is literally, we get into our routines and we sort of, you don't go to Echo Park, you don't go to North Hollywood, you don't go to Westwood because it's too far for driving or this or that or this or that. And we tend to only peripherally examine peripherally kind of get a feel for what neighborhoods are. And more than that, the people that live there, and more than that, the people that kind of created those neighborhoods. And so I hope that through this art that you get to get deeper, that people will get deeper into what the neighborhoods are. And, even for my North Hollywood play, I've got like one section of North Hollywood is what I'm examining. I don't even talk about culture. I don't talk about like who founded this area. I don't talk about the inhabitants. There's just so much richness going on in LA, and I just hope that these give a little bit of a piece where people feel like, I'll go explore that. I will look into that community, not just go and take from it, but go there. And if you do have a coffee, sit down, talk to people, and look who really lives there, and just soak it up in a way as opposed to this sort of this like consumer way that we have of either like driving through a town and making opinions about it, or maybe grabbing some food and taking it home and not really getting involved. It was a roundabout way of saying, I hope that by listening to the Zip Code Plays that we learn more about each other and about community. I'm Pepper Chambers. If you want to learn more about my play, The End of the Line, and Antaeus' Zip Code Plays, please watch this video. I heard about the Zip Code Plays because I am in another theater group, Circle X Emerging Playwrights group, and Kari Wyatt is in that group. And he mentioned that he had the Zip Code Plays. He sent us the link to it. And of course, my mind was blown. It's like, oh my gosh, it's a radio play. Like, And so I listened and I loved it. But that's how I was introduced. And I knew I had to give it a go somehow, some way, be a part of it. So my play, End of the Line, started out as a 10-minute play, also for Antaeus. So they were doing submissions for a 10-minute play. And again, this was all during pandemic. I was like, I'm going to write a story. So I wrote a story that's, of course, loosely based on myself and my husband. And this couple is sitting on the porch, getting drunk on a Tuesday afternoon, and she starts to lose it because he's not listening to her, and but they laugh and they hug and they kiss at the end. So I had that in mind. And then I also had a more serious topic in mind. So I am very close with the folks over at Lower Depth Theater Ensemble. And right before pandemic, I forgot the month. Let's just say it was September, October of 2020. They did a play called Safe Harbor by Tara Palmquist. And that was through they have a commission series on violence. And the topic was on sex trafficking and human trafficking. So I was a part of the development process in terms of literally just helping and being there and listening to Tara's words about these two girls who are trafficked. And through that, we also had experts coming in and talking to us about it. So since last year, or 2020, I'll say, it was very much on my mind. How do I get involved? How do we watch for signs? And literally, like I said, I live in North Hollywood, and there's a coffee shop over here. And one day there was a woman there, and my instinct was like, I know she's being trafficked. What do I do? And it was this terrible, awful freak out moment of not knowing what to do and seeing she's in this situation and feeling absolutely helpless and terrified at the same time. So in that moment, I was able to kind of get her, a coffee and talk to her a little bit. And so that experience is what I brought into my play. And I know that many of us, we see these people on the street, these people meaning not those people, but people on the street, and you're just not certain sometimes of what is going on in their lives, and you're sitting there with your coffee and, your sunglasses, living this life, and everything is not maybe great for you, but something is really going on with them. And so I just wanted to shine a light on awareness and being aware of what's going on in our community, and also finding the tools to actually help people that actually need our help. So end of the line, the main story of it is there's a woman, she's having some cocktails on her porch with her husband here in North Hollywood, and all of a sudden she hears a commotion downstairs, and she runs down there and she tries to help this woman who's in trouble. And it turns out that she learns, she has the thought about herself and who she's really trying to help, if it's the woman or herself. My team, our team, the team is fantastic naturally. So our director is Greg Daniel. And again, he's one of the co-founders of Lower Depth Theater Ensemble. So I got really lucky in terms of Greg is already associated with Antaeus. And so I got lucky that he said yes, that he would direct this wonderful piece. So Greg came on to the piece, and then the rest of the actors are obviously from the group. And so we have Tamara, and we have Rob, and we have Millie/Mildred. And so Tamara and Rob are the couple, and Millie is the woman in trouble. And they are absolutely fantastic, just in terms of the essence of the characters, because it's all audio. And they really understood what I was trying to get across in terms of not just the humor, because you have to have humor even in these tense moments, but also the love of the character, the love between the husband and wife, and then the delicate intimacy and another type of love for these two Black women that are in very different economic and just sort of life situations and how they connect. So all three of them are just fantastic, which you'll hear. And then how about the audio? So Jeff Gardner, as everyone knows, I learned so much, so much, like little things like, okay, so if you're, if as a writer and if you want someone to take a sip, not just the sound, but when do they take a sip? So do they take a sip before? And then I said such and such and such and such. Or is it I such and such and such and such? And Jeff was like, okay, so if you put that moment here, it sets up this type of drama. If you put it here, it puts a space. So I learned so much about the technique, but also the storytelling that is in sound, I don't even know how to explain the excitement I have of working on this and the knowledge that Jeff brought. He's so brilliant. And it's a art form that I feel is sort of lost, and I feel like he's got a great handle on it, and it's great at communicating to all of us whether direction for Greg to direct the actors or for me and how to write it into the script. And then, of course, for the actors to execute. So it was absolutely fantastic. So the difference that I'm finding between writing a regular stage play and a radio play is that you're thinking of it literally just in a different way. So you're thinking about the sound effects. So literally you're writing in SFX, like sound effects, and you might say, heels walking on the concrete. But then you get into what type of heels. Like, is it a chunky wood heel? Is it a spiky heel? Because you think like those make different sounds. And also we know that type of heel is going to be related to your character. So like if you're in the spike heel, is it a woman that's like, in a business suit and blah, blah, blah? Or if it's a chunky heel, is she kind of, like grungy woman walking through the city? So you get really specific in the type of sound and then where you want it to go and how you want it to be used. And so that's just one part, is the sound effect. And then within there, you're thinking about how sound informs your audience about what's going on. So for example, I have a cafe scene, and there were things like we put in the bell of the door, for the door opening and closing. So then you would know, okay, you have this feeling of like, this is a busy cafe. There's people coming and going. And then the sound behind us, we have the sound of a chair scraping across the floor. And that got really specific. Is it a wood floor? I'm sorry, is it a wood chair on a concrete floor? Is it a metal chair on wood? And you start thinking about those sounds. And as you're writing for that medium, your imagination just explodes in another way. So I still may have written for a stage play, I still may have written that, they're sitting in a metal chair. But now for the stage play, for the radio play, I'm like, ooh, when do I want to hear that specific sound and why? And is it fast? Like, is the character mad? So, you get a quick sound, or is it slow because someone's creeping in? There's just all these things that you can bring in and play with. But it's specific. Like you can't just be willy-nilly with it. You have to say, like I said, the metal chair on the wood, because that says something. It tells you where you are. And you just get another toy box of specifics to play with in this medium. I would say, yes, it is another character, the sound and the audio and the directions. I want the audience, after listening to End of the Line, what I really want is for people to have an awakening, to have an awareness, and to really pay attention to community. I feel that we are all here, we're living on, especially in a big city like LA, like we are living on top of each other, and we're not brushing each other like we are in New York, but we're all together, this microcosm. And instead of just sort of putting your blinders on and walking like this, I just want people to open up and to pay attention and to look at our biases and remove them when we can, and understand when they are at play. And I just want us to have to make our human connection deeper. And that's what I hope people will feel when they listen to this play. And I'm laughing because there's humor too. So I do hope that they get a couple chuckles in the beginning. I am Pepper Chambers. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please walk your way over, get your way over, run over, click over, do whatever you need to do to enjoy the Zip Code plays and everything else that is offered with this lovely theater company. Thank you.
people should listen to the zip code plays because, well, they're fun. So that's the most important thing. They're fun. They're really fun. Many of them are lighthearted, like Bingo Bitches. It's comedy. And also, to tell you the truth, because all of us playwrights, we're very diverse. We come from different backgrounds. We have different ways of telling a story, and we have different perspectives that may be interesting to an audience, may be challenging for an audience, may bring an audience something that they've never known before about the place where they live, or places that they visit, or places that they just zip past through on the freeway and never give a thought about. And it's a chance to really, enjoy the city that we live in. I mean, Los Angeles is a remarkable city. It's like nestled in the arms of the San Gabriel Mountains. And it's an opportunity to really, enjoy the love song that is the zip code plays. I mean, it's a love fest. And who doesn't like a love fest? So, yeah. That's the reason why you should listen. It's fun. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Wong, and if you want to know more about my zip code play and about Antaeus Theatre, watch this video. The zip code plays are fun to listen to because you really get to focus on the words. And, for a playwright, that's like warms the cockles of your little heart. It's like, oh, I love that, because you're listening to words, and I love words, new words. That's one of the joys of the audio play. And also, it's asking the audience to fill it in, so you doing, the audience, the listeners doing the work of creating the world that they see as inspired by the sounds that they're hearing, by the words that are being spoken. And I think that is just another way of reaching into the heart of an audience through their ears. The inspiration for my zip code play 91754, Monterey Park Bingo Bitches. I had to write it because the title Bingo Bitches, that was inspiring enough. But the seed for the story actually came from a random woman, a Latina. I was standing in front of her as we were waiting in line at a grand opening of a new business in Monterey Park. This business was giving away swag to the first 100 people in line. So I was in line waiting for the swag bag, and I love free stuff. So what can I say? I went and I met this lady as we were waiting in line. And we got to talking, and she told me that after she finishes up getting her swag, that she was going to go play bingo. And I thought, oh, okay, so you're going to play bingo. And she told me how cutthroat bingo at the senior center was. And then she told me that there were really big payouts at these bingo games. And that once she won like about $200 at a bingo game, one bingo game off of the seniors. So this seemingly innocuous encounter in a line germinated in my brain for a while, because I had that encounter for a while. And sometimes that's just how playwrights' minds works, the writer's mind works. You just kind of file it away under maybe something can happen with this. I don't know. And then, so while it was on the back burner, the Antaeus Theater had this opportunity, and I pitched the idea. It was just like a line, like Cutthroat Senior Center Bingo in Monterey Park. That was it. I didn't even know what that was going to be. I just had the one line. I wrote it like, I got the email that was a call for entries, for submissions. I wrote 3 ideas, like bada bing, bada boom, just really fast. And I sent it. I didn't even reread it. And then I hope that there wasn't too many typos. But from the moment they said yes, is the moment I started thinking, okay, now I'm committed to writing this. What is it going to be? How can I make it fun, and also explore the world of what it's like for senior citizens and bingo and what that means to them. And that's that's how the story began. It began with the lady in line who was, going to play bingo and describing how vicious it was, and then me filing that information away until I was able to secure a commission, and then, was, as an outgrowth of that commission, was forced and focused on writing the play. Antaeus assembled an awesome team of really uber talented artists for this play, my play. There was Jennifer Chang, who is an actress, director, artistic director of Chalk Repertory Theater, which is located in Atwater Village. She's a theater professor down in San Diego at UCSD. She won the LA Drama Critics Award for her directorial work on Viet Gong, which was a production at East West Players. And she was my director and kind of at the helm of this. And she was also very good with dramaturgy, and she read the play and was able to give me some fantastic notes for the play. I originally wrote the play with kind of a bittersweet ending, kind of a, the height of the pandemic. So I was feeling very, very annoyed. And I put that annoyance, I suppose, into the play. But then Jennifer actually reminded me, and also some of the, and Bill, Kitty, Anna Rose, the management at Antaeus gently suggested maybe a happier ending. And, after thinking about it and listening to the comments, I actually reworked the ending so that it's an uplifting ending. It's an ending of hope. It's an ending that actually serves my purpose and the play more beautifully than I originally imagined. So it was very definitely a beautiful collaboration of artistic minds that helped shape the ending of the play. I don't want to give it away, though. And Antaeus also really wanted to bring authenticity to the characters by casting, Chinese actors, by casting an Armenian actor. So there was Cece Lau, who is a longtime actor, and she's the former First Lady of Monterey Park. Her husband, David Lau, was a mayor of the city. So, and Cece was great at really helping me with the Chinese language in the play, and she was very supportive, and also, really supportive about a happy ending or a uplifting ending. And she was so right. Sometimes playwrights, when we're in a mood, we write reflecting that mood, but actually it wasn't serving the play very well. So getting the feedback from fellow artists helped me see that, to look for a way to be funnier. So, bingo bitches, hello, comedy. And there was also Jade Haikush, who is a actor who I didn't know at first, but she's a veteran actor who was recommended by an Antaeus member, Rhonda Aldrich. Jade, she was fantastic with putting Armenian in the play. I told her I really wanted to put languages, and I love hearing the music of other languages in my play. So I put that music into my work, and she was great with some of the colorful Armenian phrases, if you know what I'm saying. Colorful. So I thank her for that. And then finally, last but not least, there was Karen Huey, who plays a character who is sort of based, a little bit like me, although I've never played bingo. But Karen Huey, she is like the voice-over queen. I mean, you can hear her work in all the Star Wars movies, Deadpool, Good Trouble, the TV show, which is one of my favorite shows. She's voiced over 1,500 films and TV shows, and she's like the voice of the character Yuriko in that popular video game, Ghost of Tsushima. And Karen supported my application, like I told you, to the Antaeus Playwrights Lab, and she's also a playwright. And in fact, I've taught her plays. I taught Songs of Harmony at Boston Conservatory at Berkeley, which is where I teach. I'm teaching contemporary Asian American plays and also script analysis at BOCO. And I was able to bring one of her plays to the students and introduce them to her work as a playwright. But most of all, she's my friend. And this is the first time I've ever had a chance to work with her. So that's always a pleasure, to be able to work with your friends. Yeah, it's really great to be able to work with your friends after all these years of, promising and thinking about working together. And at last, thanks to Antaeus, we got a chance to do it. And that was really awesome. So that was the cast. That was the director. And also I should mention someone who I work closely with, Jeff Gardner, who's like won a bazillion awards, and he helped and developed the Foley and the soundscape, the world for Bingo Bitches. I mean, he was an absolute joy to work with. He honors the script. He honors the words. He knows how to enhance as well as, just let the characters speak. So he's one of those rare people who knows like sound when it helps and sound when silence is best. And it's just great to work with someone who's so collaborative. And he was a lot of fun for me to work with and bounce ideas off of, because this is my first audio play, my first one. So it was great to have some guidance from Jeff. Difference between a normal and regular play and an audio play obviously is that the audience cannot see that the actors are 80 years old. That if we were on stage, you would be able to see that my characters are all in their 80s. They could do that with costuming. They can do that with lighting. They do that with their acting sculptures in space with their bodies. You could see that in a play. But in an audio play, you don't see that they're really 80 years old. I have to tell you that they're 80 and hint at their life, to hint at their timetable in their lives. Do you see what I'm saying? So the actors have to do, I have to work with an actor, thinking of the actor, how do I let the audience know through the actor that they don't see. So my work is different. I have to actually try to find a way to take things that would have been obvious when you just see it on stage, and I would have to write it in a way, finesse it in a way that isn't expositional. So I don't want exposition. So I'm going to have to try to hide it, but still find it. A way to tell you that they are older, they have different life experience, that over many, 80 years, I have a character who's like over 100. So because they're older like this, you have to they have to discuss life experiences. And that actually informed the play. It gave the play its connection, their historical connection that people who are older may have from the life that they lived, the history that they have seen. So that history that they have seen, that history that they have lived, the things that inform who they are, play out in my play. So it's a comedy, but it is also how people connect through their histories, not only personal history, but also world history. So that's one of the ways that you have to think differently when you're writing a stage play versus an audio play. And also, as I said, sound is a big, you create the world, you don't see it on stage. of a bingo parlor or a bingo hall at the senior center. You don't see the bingo cage. You don't see the cards or the little dauber that they use to mark their numbers as it's being called. You don't see that on stage, but you hear it in an audio play. And then you, the audience, can imagine what that place looks like. And your place that you imagine in your mind is going to be totally different than the place that I imagine in my mind, or even in a stage play, because they give you the world that they imagine, the set designer imagines. So you don't have the benefit of what the set designer imagined. You have your own imagination in an audio play. And I think that's the wonderment of an audio play. And I'm just thrilled to have been able to write one finally. In a lot of ways, our plays also dovetail, because I don't know how that happens, but it's weird how that happens, that the synchronicity that we all kind of found a way to modernize and make vivid something that was happened in the past, that was in the past, a history from the maybe unknown history or forgotten history from the past. And both Wyatt and I do that in our plays. And the other plays do it too, to varying degrees. So it is kind of amazing that there is some kind of weird psychic, subconscious thread that we all kind of like dove into the cosmic idea pool and then kind of got out and then started writing our plays. And we all have little suggestions that interrelate to one another. And I was surprised actually that we all did something that was so, that the tendrils from the past kind of informed the present of the play. What I want the audience to get out of Bingo Bitches is just pure enjoyment. I just want to make your life a little lighter, to make you smile when you hear the play. You know, I'm not going to lie and say I didn't sneak some sneaky, serious things in the play, but for the most part, my purpose was to uplift and to offer enjoyment and pleasure, and to introduce audiences to a community that they may not know about. The city of Monterey Park is a very interesting city. It's a primarily Asian community, but it has been always in transition. People from all kinds of backgrounds, racial backgrounds, have lived in this city, and they pass the city down to each other as they move on through life. And and you see vestiges of that heritage in the city. You know, Monterey Park used to be, the Gabrielino, Shoshone Gabrielino Indian territory, and then it, moved on to a Spanish, Latin, white, Asian. I mean, we all live here, or we all have heritage that, thanks to the Gabrielino, a tribe that used to live here, that were by their graces living on this property. I'm living in this city, and I wouldn't have known that unless I started the zip code play journey. And in my research, as I was trying to figure out what to write, you learn things, and that's one of the benefits for me, as I learned about my own community. And I want to share what I learned and what I enjoyed and what insights I have from living here with the listeners to the Zip Code Plays. So I think that my first and foremost, though, is to offer entertainment and joy, and that's so important to me, especially with the pandemic having taken a year and a half of our lives. And so this play was written last year and was very, the germination of it started last year. And I just wanted to offer up some laughter and some pleasure and some joy to listeners and audiences. And that's the reason why I didn't set the play during the pandemic. You know, oftentimes as a playwright of conscience, I would have probably in the beginning wanted to set the play during the pandemic, but I soon learned that I don't know. I was just sad, and I was just wanting to set the play at a time before the pandemic, when everybody could get together, and that's why the play starts before the pandemic, before COVID ever hit, that you get a chance to remember what it was like. And I'm so happy that, you know, now it looks like things are normalizing and we can start seeing one another again. You know, I think that's the reason why I picked the senior center too, because it broke my heart that a lot of people could not even see their grandparents. I know my nephews could not see their grandmother, my mother, during the last year. And that saddened me. So it had a lot to do with why I chose the senior center as a location. You know, the pandemic had a lot to do with why I wanted to laugh more and to forget my troubles, to write a comedy. And that's what I want audiences to take away. I just want them to laugh. Antaeus needs to be supported because theater is hard work. It takes a lot of money at the level that Antaeus does its theater work. So support is greatly appreciated, not only in terms of finances, but just butts in the seats. That's the most important thing, is having people come to the theater to engage with the work, to be, you know, to laugh, to cry, to question, to be uplifted, to be transported, to feel the magic. And, you know, that's why Antaeus is so important to this community and to the artistic community, and it deserves your support. So why not? Do it. Write a check. Come to the theater when it opens and sit in the seats and just watch and be delighted. And it's worth it. I mean, this is reason why we are all going to work, so that we can, you know, go to concerts, go to movies, and go experience the communal experience that is the theater. So Antaeus is an important part of that in Los Angeles. And, you know, get your butts in the seat and write a check. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Wong. I'm a playwright based in Los Angeles. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, please go to the Antaeus website and check out the Zip Code plays, my play, of course. And also, there are other productions. Thanks for listening.
Well, each play is totally different. And I think what's exciting about them is that they come in a real variety of styles and genres. We, all we did was pick the playwrights from the pitches that we received, and the zip codes, and we wanted zip codes from all over Los Angeles, and then we let the writers do what they wanted. There was no other note from us except for to, again, strengthen their voice and make their voice as clear as possible. So we have some magical realism, and we have some historical fiction, and we have some things that are based on true stories, and we've got a little piece of satire. So they're all different. As you travel around Los Angeles, not only will you be moving between different geographical locations, but you'll be moving through different genres. I think that's really exciting. You can listen to the zip code plays in any order, but we have an order that we kind of put them in. So the first play is South Central by Kari Wyatt, South Central Los Angeles. And it is a piece set in 1953 when Central Avenue had just coming off of being a thriving neighborhood and just beginning to change. And it's a really interesting historical piece that talks about race relations in Los Angeles and in the world. I think it's funny. It's a little dark. It's a little sexy, and it touches on an interesting history of Los Angeles that a lot of people wouldn't know. The second play is set in Pacific Palisades by Alex Goldberg, and it is a very interesting, based on true story, crazy true story, a little piece of an odd little piece of LA historical anomaly. It's just a strange little story. And so it's based on a true thing of something that happened in the Palisades on the verge of World War II. And so I think people will want to tune in to find out like what kind of odd things were happening in the Palisades at that time. The third play is Santa Monica by Naina Agrawal, and it is a satirical piece based on a true thing that happened to her, an actual event that happened to her in Santa Monica. And it really just pokes fun at the kind of pretensions that one finds in Los Angeles and some of those stereotypes about Los Angeles that, are a little bit true. And I think it's a very funny little piece of satire. The fourth play is set in Westwood, and it is by Deb Height, and it is it's in an interesting genre of like found materials. It is items that have been tape recordings that have been found in an FBI file on a woman who's become a new protester in the social justice world, it's as in the Blair Witch Project, insofar as like it's found material, and it's set in Westwood. The next play is set in Sun Valley, and it's by Steve Serpus, and it is a really interesting relationship story between two people, set in an auto junkyard. Two people who have a lot of coincidence has reconnected them, and they kind of come together and find a little bit of salvation in far out in the valley. And the last play is Downtown Los Angeles by Angela J. Davis, and it is it's a piece of magical realism. It is a little fantasia where some historical figures come back to life in Los Angeles and sort of set in a swirling world high above the city of angels. We take a look at grace and kindness and forgiveness. And it's kind of a perfect ending for this series of our zip code plays. So season 2 of the Zip Code Plays, we wanted to continue looking at a variety of parts of LA County, different geographical areas, and we wanted to look at different styles. So first up, we have 90069 West Hollywood, where we have a very funny story, Brunch Interrupted by Sean Abley, which is looks at issues of colonization and gentrification in West Hollywood. And I'm, of course, partial to that one because I get to play a role in it. I actually have an acting part. So I enjoyed that one very much, and the awesome co-stars that we have on that. So we open the season with West Hollywood. Next, we have 90026 Echo Park, $10 in a Tambourine, which looks at the early days of Los Angeles with Amy Semple McPherson and Mr. Mulholland, who built up this city in their own individual ways, and it takes a look at the challenges that she faced as a woman in Echo Park, building up Los Angeles when it was really just starting out. It's a great play, and that is written by Mildred Inez Lewis. Then we have 90303 Inglewood, The Vig by Paula Sismar, which I love this story too. It takes place in the last days of the Hollywood Park racetrack, and it's in a bit of an old-fashioned story. What I love about it is it sort of tells that the story of people who come to Los Angeles searching for a dream, which is a lot of us. Often you see that kind of in a showbiz context, some young person off the bus from wherever they come from looking for Los Angeles to answer their dreams. And in this case, it takes place in a different setting, but also saying questions about chasing dreams as a young person coming here, and how do you make it in this world of Los Angeles. Then we have 91331 Pacoima, Golden Shine, and that's by Kari Wyatt, who wrote our South Central episode in season 1. He's back. This is it's our first ghost story. It's a kind of a haunting tale of a professor who's haunted by the past and looking to move forward in the future. It's a little spooky and a little resonant about the times we live in and where we're going. It's an awesome story. Then we have 91601 North Hollywood, End of the Line. North Hollywood is where Antaeus used to be. That's where our former home was. That is Pepper Chambers' play. That has a very interesting structure. It's kind of in 2 parts. The first is a bit of a comedy about a woman who wants to start her own detective agency. And things take a more serious turn in the second half when she witnesses something that actually is a problem, an ongoing kind of crime that's happening. And she witnesses that and then has to deal with the consequences. And then we finish out the season with 91754 Monterey Park, Bingo Bitches by Elizabeth Wong, which is I love this play too. I love them all. I mean, I'm a big fan of all of them. This is a story of some older women at a bingo hall at their local community center in Monterey Park. And it really asks questions about whose place is this? Whose land is this? It's about taking one's own space and owning one's own space. But set in a very, very funny bingo hall. And those are the plays of to make up season 2. So season 3, we are very excited to finally have a play in our very own hometown of Glendale. This is set in 91201 Glendale, The Six Pianos of Miradero, and that is written by Alex Goldberg, who wrote our Pacific Palisades show in season 1. So he has returned for us to open up this season in Glendale, our hometown. And this is a little history play about Mr. Brand, who Brand Avenue is named after. Our theater is just around the corner from Brand Avenue on Broadway. This is the story about his wife, his will, and his legacy in Glendale. The Six Pianos of Miradero. Then we go to 91505 Burbank for True Sound by Steve Apostolina. Steve is a writer and actor, but he also makes his living working in post-production voiceovers, doing looping and walla groups, and he knows that world of post-production very well. And this play is set in a Burbank soundstage late at night, where an apprentice and a master of the art of post-production sound meet, and things get a little dicey. That's called True Sound. Then we will go to 90262 Linwood, Blue Like You, written by Ann Noble, which is a story of a mother and daughter coming together after a very long time being apart. And it is a very funny, touching, gentle play about the importance of names and what we call ourselves and who we are. And that is Blue Like You. Then we are going to 90027 Griffith Park, where Pepper Chambers, who wrote our North Hollywood play in season 2, is back with The Fire in Between, which tells the story of a couple ambitious young men and Griffith Park and an incident that happened in 1933, a true story that takes place in the park, which is we're very lucky to have a huge urban wilderness in the middle of Los Angeles, and that's Griffith Park. Then we will go to 90039 Frogtown for Anaxarus Boreas, which is a story about a gentrifying neighborhood and some a bit of a biblical plague happens there as new residents to the community are faced with some unexpected neighbors. I should say, Frogtown is written by Daniel Hirsch. And then Diana Burbano brings us 90028 Hollywood, Marie Dressler, Good Gal. A look at the early days of the film industry in Hollywood, where which brought so many of us to town to pursue that film and television world. And Diana Burbano looks at Marie Dressler, a character actress from the beginning of Hollywood, and her sort of struggles and triumphs, and how she makes it in this early days of the silver screen, which we thought was an appropriate way to wrap up season 3. So we created some additional programming around the Zip Code Plays, and that's the Zip Code Play Tours. What we decided to do was choose landmarks, historical highlights, architectural gems, points of interest in each one of the zip codes, and make an audio tour of them. And these are tours that you can do virtually, digitally. You can follow them along, or you can actually go to the zip code and drive around and look at these. We have great actors from within our company narrating the tours. So much like when you go to a museum and there's an audio tour that you listen to as you go around the museum, these audio tours will bring you throughout the zip code, each individual zip code, and you'll learn about the sites and of that spot. And they're really interesting. I've gone and done them all, so as a test case. And there are parts of Los Angeles that I don't know and I was not aware of at all. And so the chance to drive around them and get to know those places has been a real treat. And whether you live on the west side or the east side or wherever you are, there's probably a part of town you don't know so well. So Pacific Palisades was a place I really didn't know very well. And Pacoima is another place I did not know very well. So we go all around Los Angeles, and it's a chance to get to know these places. When we first released them, it was right during a lockdown that had come up. So we were recommending to everyone that they do them virtually and give them a listen, and you can see pictures and listen to the explanations of the places. But I think now people are careful and take caution. They should be able to go around and do these in person as well. And we also were able to hook up with individual independently owned businesses in each of the zip codes. So, there are stops for coffee or snacks along the way. So we recommend that you give those places a try and get to know the neighborhoods. It's a good way to get to know Los Angeles. And, also it's been interesting now that we have quite a few of them to see how much, one architect who worked in this neighborhood turns out did something over here, and turns out they did something else over here. So there are a lot of connections that start to happen if you take advantage of the entire program. And those are the Zip Code Play tours. I think the thing I want people to take away from the entire Zip Code Play project is a sense of what Los Angeles is and who we are and what this city is about. It's a big, sprawling, unwieldy city. We know that. It takes hours to drive across from one end to the other. And it can be a place that is isolating in some ways. You don't run into people necessarily in the same way you do on the streets of New York or something. But when we put all these pieces together, and you hear now we have 18 zip code plays, when you hear them in their entirety, you start to really get a sense of how this city is as a whole, and all the unique pieces that make it up. And and as a theater that wants to serve our community here, I think it's really important that we get to know Los Angeles better. And I think this will help people get to know Los Angeles better. I think people need to hear them because, well, for one, the talent and the caliber of the writing and the casts are incredible. I don't think anybody will be disappointed. I think anyone who listens to one will want to hear another. They're a maximum a half hour long, so it's a nice bite-sized piece for your walk or for your cleaning the kitchen or the garage, folding the laundry. It's a perfect way to spend a little time immersed in another world, and yeah, there's no reason not to, and they're free. In some ways, it's hard to say why theater is so important to the structure of a community when there are obviously medical issues and that there are severe problems in the world, right now, and maybe always. But I don't think we can put art aside and just say it's not worth anything. I think that artists change the culture. They change the topic of conversation. They move the meter on where people are in the world. I don't know. Everyone has their own opinion about what art can do and the power of art to make social change, to speak out about important topics. My personal experience has shown me, or what interests me, I guess, is telling true stories, shining a light on voices that we have not heard, looking at issues from all sides and allowing audiences to take what they will. I'm not as big a fan of preaching to the audience as I am to presenting stories about people's humanity, different characters' humanity, whether those things are, not are good, bad, or indifferent. To talk about the complexities of the human character, of humanity, and letting people draw their own conclusions from that. I know that art has affected my life in every way. I think that is true for a lot of young people coming up. I think it's true for older people who are asking questions about what's life mean. And by the way, anybody who's asking questions about what does life mean, art is there to shine a light on that and to delve into those difficult questions. And I wouldn't want to live in a society where that was not important. So while there are all kinds of causes out there that need help, I think supporting art is a very noble and exciting and challenging way to spend one's time. Well, there are always ways for people to get involved with Antaeus, whether they are subscribers, donors, audience members. We are always looking to invite you to get involved. I think Antaeus is a real community. I think it's a place where people come together and feel like it's their artistic home. We're small enough that there's an intimacy, but large enough that there's some structure to what we're doing, and a big enough tent that everyone is welcome. So I would encourage people to get involved by listening to the Zip Code plays, by checking out the website, antaeus.org. Come and see what we're doing. When we're back in person, for sure, come and see what we're doing. There's always a place to be a part of this, and I hope that we are able to create a bigger and more embracing home for everybody, whether they are in the audience, whether they are working behind the scenes, whether they're working front of house, whatever they're doing. This is a place where like-minded people come together. And somebody said that a theater should be like a town square where we all kind of come together and talk about things and hash out ideas and share thoughts. And I like that idea. Hi, I'm Bill Brocktrop. I'm the artistic director of Antaeus Theatre Company. And we invite you to check out our website and everything going on at antaeus.org and become a part of what we're doing. Thank you so much.